We're going to start out by going through Robot Studio and creating a station. So you can put a desktop icon on your desktop or in the start menu. You can find Robot Studio through ABB Industrial IT, Robotics IT, and any version that you have currently installed will be used here. I'm going to use Robot Studio 5.15.02. And I'm not going to use the 64-bit, but I'm going to use the 32-bit. So when you first open up Robot Studio, you've got, generally if you open it up without opening up a specific file, it'll open up in the new tab. You can also go into Recent tab and you can see any recent projects you've worked on. So we're going to go through and create a new empty station, and we're going to build a station. There's a couple different ways you can build a station. The easiest way, or the easiest way that should work, is by using Robot Studio's system from layout. To be able to use the system from layout, you have to bring in your different robots and equipment that you want to bring in. So we'll use a 2600 robot. There we go, 2600, 1.85 reach. This is the meters reach. You can go through all of these things. The capacity in kilograms on the end of the torch, or at the TCP of the torch. And you can look up the specific information about the robot in documentation. Now I use a 3D mouse to rotate around here because it makes it easier for me. So I'm going to bring in a robot and I'm going to bring in a positioner. So I'll just get a bigger positioner. I mean, it doesn't really matter. This is just a simulation. So that's the positioner. I decided, hey, this is the one I want to use. Maybe I'll just go smaller. And there we go. So this is the positioner I want to use. Now when you bring it in, if it's an ABB library, it'll bring it in right to the top and dead center there. And then the robot will be sitting up top, and everything will be sitting based off of 0. So we're going to go through here and we're going to bring in a torch as well. Import library. So now I can, when you import libraries, you can import standard ABB libraries from here. Tracks, robots, positioners. You can import equipment libraries. This would be standard ABB stuff as well. They've got some tools that they have. So we'll just use one of their tools that they bring in. They got Benzel water cooled, 22 degrees. That sounds good. That's what we use for now. And then you can see it come here at the base of the robot. To be able to attach this to the robot, all you do is pick it up and drag it to the robot. If you want to update the position, you have to read this because in different versions of Robot Studio, they've changed what this message said. So some versions said, do you want to keep the position of the Benzel water 22? But this one says, do you want to update? So I'm going to say yes to this one. And you can see it automatically goes out to the end of the torch because of how the libraries are built. And you'll notice there's a bit of spacing there. That's because most likely when they created this torch, they already anticipating that you're going to need a isolation barrier there. So they didn't model that in, but that will be needed. And you can see how that is not lining up exactly with that either. So usually there's going to be an isolation barrier between there to isolate the torch from the robot. And so I'm just going to set the position of everything here. So we'll go set position, and I'm just going to move this out a meter, so 1000, and apply. And you'll notice here you can type things in and hit enter, and there's some quick buttons we'll go through in other videos, and I'll go through some of them in this video that you'll see that I will do. And then the robot, I'm actually going to bring it up, rise it up a little bit. So I'm going to click on the robot, and I don't need to hit set position again on the robot, so you can right click this and scroll down to set position, or you can right click and hit S and bring up the same menu. So I'm going to bring the robot up 500 meters or 500 millimeters and then hit apply or enter. And so that's my robot and my positioner, and then I'm going to say okay, now I need to bring a part into this. So I've already got some parts brought in here, so I'm going to go, you can go Control G, we'll bring this in, import geometry, and there it is, Control G, and import library. If you have a specific library you want to browse out to, Control J. So I'm going to import a library, and I'm going to drive out to my documents, Robot Studio, Geometry, and I'm going to import these two assemblies that I created. You can import multiple, you can import one at a time. So I'll import one at a time, and they bring in and they come to this random location because this is just a geometry that I brought out from SolidWorks. The standard format that Robot Studio can import is SAT files. You can get other expansions or other additions to be able to import other model types. So I'm going to import the other one. This time I'm going to use Control G and import my other one. So this is number 2, so I'm going to do number 4. And so these are my two models. Now there's different ways you can get these things into position. You've got some drag tools here, so you can click on the part, drag it up, move it over, get about where you want it, and say, yep, that looks good. Or you can go through and click on the part and go deselect this drag tool. You can also actually even use this to reorient it. But you can select on this tool here and go set position, right click and hit set position, and then just say, hey, you know what, from there to there is a meter, so it's 1,000. I'm just looking at from that line there because the squares on the floor are always 1 meter. So it might not be 1,000 in the X, so let's go 800. That looks about good. And the Z, I'll just try a number. Oops, that was a bit much. So maybe not 1,500, let's go 1,000. So 1,000 might be a little less. There's different ways you can do this to figure out how you want to do it. And then in the Z, we'll just go negative, because here's the world XYZ, and so this is Z positive, so here I'm going to go negative, and this is based off of the world. So I'm going to go negative 200, or make it negative 400, and hit apply. So that's one way, and they're both kind of close to where they should be, maybe not be exactly. So then another thing you can do is a set position, or place 1 point. So you go place 1 point, 2 point, 3 points. I usually use 1 point because it's more predictable. We'll go through in other videos about the other options, and frames is also very predictable as to what it's going to do. Basically what it does is lines up 2 different frames. So this right here is a frame. That little yellow, red, green, and blue is the frame of that thing. So I'm going to go here and go place one object, or place object on 1 point, so point to point, from point to point, and I'm going to select my snap object tool, because this will give you, the snap object tool will give you several different areas you can snap to. You can see there how it's highlighting that little corner right there, and if it's not hiding on yours, you can look at my other videos to go through and see why that's highlighting. And look at the highlighting thing I'm talking about, that little ball that focuses there right on the corner. As I go to different areas, you can see it's there now. Now it's over at this corner over here. So that's what I'm talking about when it highlights those little areas, and it's very useful. There it's highlighted the center of that part. This one gives an all-around section of where to highlight. Snap center is just going to do center of a surface, so it'll do the center. This is a surface selection, so it'll do the center of that surface, and this will do the center of that surface. Snap midpoint, this snaps the midpoint of an edge, so it'll only snap the midpoints of these edges. You can see how it's moving around. Snap endpoint, or snap end, it'll only snap the ends of edges. Snap edge, this will snap anywhere along the edge. You can kind of see it's a little dark here, or too bright here. You can kind of see how it's dragging along that edge there as I move it along. This snap gravity could be a dangerous tool, because if you're having, depends upon what you're selected. If you're having a part selection, this will select the entire part, and gravity, what it's going to select is the center of gravity of that part. So on these simple parts, probably won't be hard. It'll do a good job. But if you do more complex stuff, The bigger, the more complex stuff, it might crash your system. Snap local origin. This will snap the local origin. So you can see how it's highlighting that frame right there. That frame right there is the local origin of that part. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use this place object, and I'm going to select this snap object because I want to place make sure these objects are lined up with each other and centered. So I'm going to select the center of, now I've got this part 2, and it depends upon which part you have selected as to which one's going to move. So I'm going to line up these part 2 with part 4, and so I'm going to select the center of part 2. Oops, you got to make sure it's selected up here so it actually selects it. Center of part 2 from, and going to the center of part 4. And I hit apply, and this will do X, Y, and Z. And since the plates thicknesses are the same, I know they're going to line up. If the plate thicknesses were different, then I would select the bottom of those plates to make sure the bottoms line up. And hit apply. And so this is, I'm just putting this in positions, assuming, hey, this is where my tooling's at, and it probably won't be this high. And so then I'll go close. So now these parts are sitting more or less centered on this positioner. If I wanted exactly in the center, I can center them both up this way, so I can select both of these parts, right click them, place one point, and then I could choose, hey, you know what, I want to make sure from side to side here there's dead center on that part. So I'm going to go from there to the center of the positioner in that action. And I only want to move, I don't want to move the Z, and I don't want to move the X, I just want to move the Y. So it's 11 millimeters off. You can see that, 11.1, right up there. And so I'm going to hit apply. And now they're moved, now they're centered. And so now I need to move them both down a little bit. So I'm just going to go and I can say, hey, you know what, this is actually too high. So I'm going to go from there to the top of this right here, but only, so that's 850 to 700, so it's 150 millimeters difference, but I only want to move the Z, and I want it to be 25 millimeters off, so I'm going to go plus 25, and then hit apply. And so now these are sitting up from the top of the face of the positioner up an inch, about an inch, to be there. And so that will as well assume, hey, this is where I want to build my system at. So this is a layout of positioner, but there's no controller here right now, so I can't actually program this yet. And if you go to the add-ins tab, arc welding's there, but it controllers won't open because the controller is not ready, because there actually isn't a controller here. So if we go to the controller tab, we'll be able to see what controllers we have present. So now we talked about how we're building a station. So first we bring in some parts, then we're going to go through and one way of doing this is to go through and we can build robot system from layout. Now this only works if you are using ABB standard libraries. It will not work with any custom libraries of robots and positioners or tracks. So I'm going to go from layout, and so we have to select the location. So I'm going to browse out and select the location for this. I'm just going to put this on my desktop, make a new folder, call it Robot Studio RS or we'll go call it RS Test, and select folder, and I'll create a station in there. I'm going to call it System 1's fine. Now this media pool, this has to be, you have to drive out if it doesn't already have it selected. So if you are using a later version of Robot Studio 5.14 and beyond, you'll have to, the standard location will be in the x86 drive, but since I'm opening up older versions, so we have Robot Studio or C program files, ABB Industrial IT, Robotics IT, and there's going to be one here called Media Pool. But since I'm using and I work often with old versions, before x86 drive was available, program files x86 drive, I've got to go back to the regular program files because I've moved my media. So ABB Industrial IT, Robotics IT, Media Pool, and you don't need to open up any of these. Then you go select folder, and this automatically populates. And it'll populate always with the latest and greatest from what it has available that you have installed. So then I just go next for here, select the mechanisms that I want to have included in this mechanism, or in the mechanisms that I have included in this system. And then these are the tasks. I go next. And now here, this will be in your system, but it's basic system, you won't be able to really do much in it, so here we're going to go options. And from here, this options menu, we can make bigger. Depending upon where you're at, this option menu and what version of Robot Studio you're using, this option menu will not be able to be made bigger. So, in Virtual Control, you can have any options, you can put any options you want to, but we're going to use just the ones needed for programming, and the general ones that we normally use at Wolf Robotics. So we'll use DeviceNet, and we'll use the master-slave signal. And then we go down. I like closing through these just to make sure that I've already gone through those. World zones, path recovery, path offset, collision detection, FTP and NFS client, PC interface, FlexPen interface, multitasking. So you can go through documentation to figure out specifically what each and every single one of these are. I won't go into detail on this.